when this board mounts, it mounts upside down. Now I'm facing it front towards me. Thankfully, we got the good side up, even though much of this is going to be covered. It's not a big deal. Like all this in the middle is going to be covered with a board, so it doesn't matter that much, but just so happens that this is very specific. This has to be the top. We want our Z end stop hole. When I'm facing the front of the unit, it's going to be at the back left. And theoretically, you could put the motor inside run the Y on either side, and the reason I put two holes here so you can do either is because in expanding the Printrbot and the LC, we might have use for one or two of those holes. You could actually have two motors and drive the bed with two if you wanted to, but there's no point really. But that's there for expansion, and the reason we like to put the motor on the right here is because over here we've made a place for the end stop to be zip tied down, and the end stop gets to poke, or the wire for the end stop gets to poke down in there. And by mounting the board to, I believe it's, yeah, to this side, we'll have room for these wires to go under there. And then one other explanation. We added a place for an end stop, so you have a minimum, and as the board slides down, you could theoretically have a maximum. The board we're using does not support minimums and maximums, only one or the other. We use minimums. I think that's true of all of them. And so these three here, we don't have six, we have these three that we're going to use. So anyway, it's going to eventually mount there. I just wanted to show you that. And then lastly, just to finish our little dry fit here, I'm going to go ahead and remove these, or at least let me just switch them here. It's not left and right specific. The reason I'm throwing that over on this side is, make sure I get this right, arrows. I always double check my work because I know some of you are going to rush and put this together and not watch the videos, and you'll regret it. You'll get several things wrong. And especially on this base, you know, we're going to build this up quickly, and you want to get this base right. So the reason I'm doing that is, since I know that my board is going to mount on the sides of my end stop, you're going to see that these holes here are going to end up lining up with these holes in the back, which is cool because you'll have a little reach-in space for your SD card slot. We made this as big as we can because we want to be able to reach in there with fat fingers, pull out your, I don't remove it often, but you know, you can upload some file, or you can put a file on the SD card through the software, but it's really fast to just pull that out, load it up with files, put it back in. And then over here is the micro USB, so it fits the cord that we send out with these units. So it's positioned perfectly using these risers, and it'll fall right on the holes. So obviously if you put your board on the wrong side, you're going to end up with something odd like that, or worse. So it will go on this side, and that is a specific thing there. So I'm going to put this board aside for now, and this guy is going to go here, and you'll see in a little bit that we can even put this on the board now if we wanted to. And that's going to be two of our holders. Because the motor is on this side, you don't have room to reach across with the board, so these risers are actually going to be inside here like so. That's going to go through there. So that's kind of an explanation of how that goes together. So before I assemble this, I'm going to do, let me just put a couple of bolts in here, and I'm going to hold this together, okay? So one very important point, and I did this on purpose on this example. I wanted you to see, and I don't know if you can see that very well, but these are square nuts, which work really nice for this. But there are also hex nuts. So some of the kits, I've gotten reports back that some of the kits, the BOM says square nuts, and that BOM, it doesn't mean that if you have something different than that BOM that it's not going to go together, or you're screwed and you can't get it together. You know, some generous people have gone out and bought spare parts and stuff, and some people have said, well, I can't find square nuts. You don't have to have square nuts. We've got some kits that now I'm aware that they ship with hex nuts instead of square nuts. First one I put together with all hex nuts, and then somebody recommended, you know, those square nuts would be nice in there, and I said, you know what, you're right. So when possible we include square nuts, but they're interchangeable. The only part on the whole bot that cannot have, or should not, it's not really cannot, but you should not try to put a square bolt in the top of the extruder. I'll just show you. These holes are actually made for hex nuts. They have a little point at the bottom so the hex nut orients properly and gets to the right depth. You can force a square nut in there, it'll work, but I wouldn't recommend it. So that's the square and hex nuts fiasco. So, you know, doing your documentation first would really be a good idea if you're doing a 3D printer Kickstarter. Alright, so anyway, I thought I'd throw, gotta remember what I'm doing here, so I'm going to remind myself where that goes. So, and it just works like this. I've pre-fitted a washer onto a 1/2 inch 632 bolt, and I've got that ready. Oh, I need some nuts here, and I'm going to go ahead and use a hex nut to further drive home my point. So sometimes I'll put it in like this before I fit it, and I'll hold it with my fingers. Sometimes the part is in a place that I got to get some pliers and carefully put it in there and see if I can hold it with one finger and then get this in there. Now this is one good example here. So this is a perfect size bolt, and I can use a washer. You know, theoretically it provides a lot of strength for all of my you know, fittings here, putting pieces together. But there are several places where, just because of the particular design needs, we have not required. See how there's a difference between just a simple hole, and if I were putting this together, which way is it going? Oh, it's the wrong side. See? Specific. Okay. So again, make sure that's right. I've already screwed it up, I think. No, there it is. So this hole is different than this hole. This is just a simple hole for a screw. So the washers would be optional, and honestly, I don't use them when there's just a hole. I just put it in and let the button head, you know, suck in that particular one. So I'll put that together in a second, but I wanted to show you over here, when you've got a fitting like this, the other style fitting we use, if you put your hex nut or square nut in there, if you don't use a washer here and you just go ahead with the button head screw, what happens is, see if I can illustrate it, it has very little grip. You can see this wood is 6 millimeters. The holes are slightly larger, so they don't fit together so tight. You're tearing up your wood when you put it in there. And this won't necessarily, it won't get any pull down on this. This is loose because it's not grabbing the sides of the wood. So I'll show you the big difference here. If I start with a washer, then it's going to reach over. It's going to grab the wood. See how it grabs the wood on both sides? Even if it's, you know, these washers aren't so tight that they center, self-center. So I like to be really anal and go through and center those and try to get those tight. Now, the plane of the bottom piece here that's fitting into the top piece is such that it doesn't actually exceed the height of the plane, the top plane of the wood. So it's a little lower. And so when I tighten that screw, there's room for it to suck that bottom piece up nice and snug, and I don't know if you can see, but it's real snug over here, and there's a lot of play over here. So as we put this together with washers on these open square holes with the bolt going through, that would be the proper way to do it. I'll do another one here with the square nut, and you can see there's really no difference holding it there. I'll get my washer. Sometimes I lay it right there. See? Gotta have that washer on those fittings. Alright, double checking the work here. Arrow's pointing forward. That's correct. It's going like this, so I know my board's going to be on this side. Put the nut in, hold it. Always checking my work. Really avoids it. I don't need a washer on this one, like I said. Okay, so I'll spare you the time of doing both sides. I'm just going to dry fit it. This is the complicated one. Now,